Jodi Krangle, voice actor, solopreneur, podcaster, media geek.
The
Welcome.
truth.
Welcome,
Thank you.
welcome, and thanks for making the time to talk to me.
My pleasure.
Um, so I'm gonna start with sort of a basic question. You publish a podcast called Audio Branding, uh, the hidden gem of marketing.
I do.
Right? So, what is audio branding, and why should a marketer care?
Well, it has to do it's the audio version of the visual version of your brand is what it is. And what you want to do is have those two things consistently telling the world who you are. If they're not connected, if one gives one impression and another gives a different one, then
Mhm.
people aren't subconsciously, they're not going to trust you because they don't understand why these two things don't match up. So I think that when people don't give the audio portion of their brand enough attention, the way that they give attention to the visuals, they're missing out on, first of all, deeper connections with their clients,
Mhm. Mhm.
but also on actually being authentically who they are, because the audio is a part of that too.
Wonderful. Yeah. No, I totally get that, and I am always puzzled by folks who sort of find that idea a bit, you know, strange or like, hey, this is interesting, right? It is
Yeah.
interesting for sure, right?
Yeah.
But we do live in a world where you use a lot of sense, all of your senses to navigate and so on and to understand. And so it just feels natural that hey, there's a visual and but there's also the sound, how you sound as a brand. So give me like an example so that folks who are still like fuzzy about it, right?
Yeah.
How would let me like put it in term like stock term? How would a marketer or marketing team uh, incorporate audio in their daily routine of getting the message out, the brand out, and connecting with folks, whether they are clients or prospects? How what would be a concrete example of them pulling in audio?
Well, a lot of it has to do with how they advertise. So,
Mhm.
certainly the music and the voice that they use
Mhm.
behind any advertisement is a big thing.
Mhm.
What's on there on hold? Like a lot of people don't pay attention to what's happening when people are waiting on your phone line,
Mhm.
right? I mean, it's just really as simple as that. But if you are a high-end jewelry store and you have 80s hairband music on your on hold,
Mhm.
that's not a good demonstration of who you are as a company.
That's a great example. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's just one thing. I mean, there's tons of them. And you're also talking about the world of Alexa and Google Home, right?
Right.
So how do you differentiate yourself on those units when all you're experiencing is sound? That's all
Yeah.
you get. You don't
True.
get the visual.
True. Absolutely. Yeah. I guess I was just thinking as you were saying that um, in the example you gave on whole music, right? Usually
Mhm.
that's sort of delegated to customer care people, as it were, or maybe even one person who decides, let me go through all these interesting musics, right, and pick one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess if a brand or a marketing team wants to take audio and voice seriously, they probably need to do some initial cleaning up, right? Which would be
Definitely.
right, which would be like, okay, where are we? Where is sound representing us, right? And that
Mhm.
would be one example. Okay, let's go and figure out what's the on-hold music, right? And sort of reclaim that decision
Yeah.
in their tent,
But
right?
you need to think of who the company is, right? Before you even get to anything changing.
Sure,
So if you
sure.
have a look at what the visuals are and you understand what the company is trying to get across by using those visuals, the colors, the logo, the fonts, what
Mhm.
kind of attitude are they trying to convey to the world? Are
Right,
they a formal brand or an informal brand?
right.
Are they urban hip kind of brand, or are they selling high-end pianos and there's different versions of, and I mean, I guess you could have urban hip pianos. I guess you could.
Yeah,
I mean, there's all
yeah,
sorts of
yeah.
permutations of this kind of thing. And so you need to figure out where you fit in that mix. Why did you choose the visuals? And then follow through with who you are and how you sound.
Yeah.
So just as simple, like I know that Costa Rica was just given an award, I think in 2019, through the International Sound Awards for their rebranding. And part of their rebranding was figuring out how to make a sound out of the sun. So if you think about that, it's concepts made into audio, concepts made from the visuals into audio. And how does it make you feel? Because audio is the emotional context. If you're if you're watching a movie and the sound is off, you're getting an idea of what's going on in the movie. You can kind of get what the plot is, but you don't care about it.
True. Yeah, it's sort
right?
of, you've lost a lot.
Yeah. So if you're listening, that gives you the emotional context. It allows you to get involved. It draws you in. That's what sound does for a brand.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, and nobody's been able to explain it, and people who have thought about this quite a bit have not been able to explain why there has to be music in a movie, right? When there is, somebody's walking and there is a thread coming up, there's some music that needs to be played, right?
It's the warning.
It's the warning, right?
Yeah. Like I said, it's the context.
It's the context. It sort of just primes you, and without it, right? I mean, you lose a lot, like you were saying.
You really do.
You lose quite a bit. And so, So let's think about, I just want to push a little bit more in terms of like the concrete things, because it's always about, okay, yeah, sure, this is important. What do we do?
Yes.
What do we do? What do we do?
Sure.
So I guess the first thing is, let's say there's a marketing team, and they do have a brand that they care very much about, but they haven't thought at all about audio. Let's say they don't do commercials, so music is not there, which is most companies, right? But they do have a customer care line, like sort of we talked on Whole Music.
Sure, yeah.
And maybe they have a podcast, right, where there needs to be an intro and so on.
They might very well have a video on their website.
They may have a video, exactly, a video on the website. So I guess the first thing would be, like you said, how do you sound, right? How does your brand sound? Would and I think I know the answer to this, right?
Sure.
Would just a team of regular marketers be able to figure it out, or do they need to go to an expert like you? Which I think they need to go to an expert like you. But tell me, like, how far can they go on their own, or they shouldn't just touch it?
Well, okay, just to explain, I'm a voice actor, so that's what I do. I'm not an audio branding person. I don't actually have an audio branding company. So if someone wanted to go deep in this, I just don't want to mislead anyone. But I do know a few people who do that kind of thing. And the idea that I've heard from them is that most of the marketing people don't have an expertise in this kind of thing. So it's not that they couldn't figure it out, maybe given enough time and money, but it's that it's a lot quicker for someone who's familiar with it to get to where you need it to be for less dollars. Because as a general marketing firm, you're probably going to have to do a lot of experimentation before you get to the point where you're happy. And there are audio branding companies that deal specifically in that kind of thing and have processes that they go through in order to make sure they get you what you need as quickly and for a reasonable amount of dollars as they possibly can. So I think that there is something to be said for going to an expert, definitely. Not to say that a marketer may not have a good handle on this, just that maybe they might need some extra guidance.
I ask this only because I come from a world where, or I used to be in a world where the companies where I worked for launched these IVR telephony solutions, right?
Yes. Yep.
Right. And so before you go to the on-hold music, there's also a lot of audio that you would need to think about to ensure that you're reflecting your brand, how you welcome folks, and the voice that you use, and so on.
Exactly.
And all that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very important.
Very important. And the thing is that what we for the longest time we had to struggle with, was part of selling, is companies think that they can. It's easy, to build. Get the engineer. It's an engineering problem. Building an IVR is an engineering problem, right? So what prompt they choose and all that is it's recorded by, the best voice in the company, whoever, somebody
Yeah.
in sales or somebody in customer care.
Yeah.
Just get that person. And so they never, not never, but for the longest time, they didn't take it seriously. They thought it was a technical as opposed to, a marketing exercise, right?
And yet it's the
Yeah.
first point of contact for a lot
Right.
of your clients.
Right.
Imagine that. I mean, that's what they're hearing. They're not hearing your commercials. They're not
Yeah.
hearing, maybe they're not even watching the video on your website.
Yeah.
They
They
are
call you,
going and calling you.
and
Yeah.
they call you for a reason, and they usually, they have a question,
Yep.
or they want to buy, for example, right? And
Yeah.
so I go back to that only to point out that the most obvious things in the world, all right,
Mhm.
are not obvious to a lot of people. So we have to walk through things that
Yes.
are obvious to us. So for the longest time, we had to explain to them, like you, exactly like you said, like this is maybe the first time that they engage with you for real besides the website.
Yeah.
The first thing they hear is something that clearly is not reflecting your brand, doesn't sound professional.
Yeah.
Do you really want to not sound professional, right? Of course not, right?
It's
And
a really
so,
good place to let people know who you are too. I
yeah,
mean, that like your website, like any other visual medium, it's a good place for people to understand who you are as a company.
yeah,
And that's important. People should know.
yeah,
Why are you doing what you do otherwise?
exactly. And the challenge with voice is because all of us are, expert conversationalists, right?
Yes.
We know how to talk. We know how to do things.
That
We know
doesn't mean
how
you
to
can read a script and make it sound like you're just
exactly.
speaking.
Or that you can actually design a flow, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Very
Because you
important.
can do it naturally, right?
Yep.
It's like being fluent in French,
Mhm.
but that doesn't make you a good teacher
No.
of French,
Yeah.
right? You may not, or in English, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And so you don't know the rules, you don't know, all the, the basic best practices and all.
Yeah.
And so I think that point, right? I think is just amplified when you think about audio branding as a whole set of
Mhm.
practices, right? Um, and so I think there's a bright future for anyone who's into audio branding.
Yeah.
Um, and so let me ask you this question then.
Go for it.
you you're a voice actor,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
you're a podcaster.
Mhm.
And so audio is central to who you are and what you do professionally.
Oh, yeah. It has been
Yeah.
since, day 1 pretty much.
For the longest time.
Yeah.
Um, and so what what would you say um, in terms of, again, action? Like, what would, if somebody wants to become somebody in consult in voice branding, what kind of skills do they need to build? Let's say they really love audio, and maybe they were in music, or maybe
Mhm.
I know a couple of people who have degrees in music, right?
Mhm. Sure.
um, and they're sort of, they're hooked on, they feel there's something really interesting in this audio space, and so they want to get into it, right? Let's say somebody wants to be consulting with companies to make sure that they launch that audio brand in a way that's, that reflects who they are and so on. How do they go about this? What would they do? Should they, I don't know, are there concrete things that they can do to start becoming maturing into this kind of consultancy?
It's a good question. I first thing I would probably do is call up some of the audio branding companies and see if you can do some work with them. Just,
Mm-hmm.
if you like, even as an intern, if that's something that you want to learn more about, working with a company that does it every day is probably a good way to do it. But I would say that some of the things you need to have would probably be some kind of musicality and some kind of psychology. And I say psychology because audio is one of those things that hits us almost unconsciously. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things that we have been, evolutionary wise, we have been made and built biologically to pay more attention to. So if you understand how that works, that probably will give you a really big leg up.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, I was talking to someone who graduated from UCLA Music College, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And he was telling me all kinds of things that I didn't know. Like, for example, and these are the things that they take classes on, and so they think deeply about audio and voice,
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
and so on. And he gave me just one tidbit, which was about why we human beings like the sound of birds chirping.
Oh, well,
Mhm.
because it means that there's safety.
Yeah,
Because birds stop chirping when it's not
exactly.
safe.
Right? I didn't
Yes.
know that, right? I didn't
Yeah.
know that. So that's why that's your psychology, right?
Yes.
I
But
didn't know
biology, that's biology,
that's
really.
biology. Yeah,
I mean, if you think about it, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So if let's say you're, I don't know, I'm just brainstorming with you now, right? Let's say you're
Sure.
an insurance company, right?
Yeah.
Maybe birds, in the background.
Well,
Well,
you know what? Like, if we're brainstorming about this, if you're
yeah,
thinking about an insurance company, most of them want to give you reassurances and
reassurance,
calmness,
right?
and they want to make you feel safe.
Safe, yeah,
So, you're doing this, so you're fine. You're going to be fine,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
all of those kinds of emotions can be evoked with
right,
sound.
right,
They
right.
can be evoked with
Yeah,
colors and with a logo and all of
mm,
that as well, and a very
yeah,
calming voice
right,
on a television commercial,
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But the music that goes behind
Music,
that,
yeah. What you
and
say and how you say it, yeah,
yeah, exactly. It's all very important, and it all works together to make that why the company is in business, and put that out into the world and make sure people understand it, that they have the emotional context for it.
yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you've been a voice actor since what, 2007, I see
Yep.
in your bio.
Mhm.
So what does a voice actor do?
Any of those voices that you hear that don't have a person in front actually speaking them.
Mhm, mhm,
Pretty much anything. So, the voice behind a commercial where you don't see the person speaking, you just hear them, or a radio commercial, or the voice on IVR and on hold,
mhm.
or on a web video,
What
or
do
in a
you-
kiosk, or in an airport making the announcements, or in a cinema, like all sorts of,
mhm,
like, live announce is actually technically under voiceover as well, although it's slightly a different genre. Cartoons and animation and video games and audiobooks and e-learning is another huge one. Lots of e-learning where, you're using a human voice to help instruct other people and help them learn
yeah.
a concept for the company or for a course they're taking, or, all sorts. There's so much stuff.
It's yeah. I wanted to just have you say all that because it's everywhere, right?
Yeah, it
It's
really
in
is
metro,
everywhere. Yeah.
it's in the airport. It's everywhere. It's around
Yep.
you, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, and also you're a singer, is
Mhm.
that right?
Yep.
And did you put out an album in
I
2015?
I did. It's on my website. Yes. I sing jazz. I'm like a torch singer.
It's really cool. Uh,
But that's why sound has been a part of my life since, the pretty much I learned how to talk, because my mother is a singer and my dad plays guitar and piano by ear, and I learned how to play piano by ear, and I
wow,
don't read a note of music, but I, got through various music programs growing up,
wow.
and still perform on occasion. Well, not lately.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but unfortunately, yeah, it's been, curbed significantly, but
that's great. And then
mhm.
your podcast. When did you start a podcast?
Why?
When did you start it and why?
Oh, I started it, in 2019 in November, and I was a member of a business mastermind, and we were all kind of thinking about ways to do things that would be of interest to our businesses. And I mean, I was sort of brainstorming with them and thinking, well, I don't want to start another voice actor podcast. There's a ton of them out there. I'm not a
Mhm,
coach. I don't want to coach people on this. This isn't something I want to be known for. So brainstorming about it, I kind of thought, well, so I'm a voice actor, which means I'm one small part of the whole audio branding umbrella.
mhm,
So why don't I explore the wider world of sound and how it affects us, and
mhm,
how it
mhm.
makes us buy more things, and how it affects our daily lives, and how we can learn and be healed through it, how our environment is noise, how the universe started with noise. I mean, like, it's all audio. Sound is
How
everywhere.
the first thing we do when we come out to this world
Yeah,
is, yeah,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Make a lot of noise.
And we probably hear our mother's voice while we're in the womb, right? Like, that's why, women play music while they're
Mhm.
pregnant, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, like, specifically, uh, some do actually make sure that the music is near their stomach, like it's it's a thing. But yeah, it's everywhere, and it's in so many of the daily things that we do, and yet we've given the visuals so much more attention.
yeah,
And I think partially that's because we have to, because you can't focus on something visual and then also focus on something else. You have to focus on that one thing. When you're talking about audio, you can listen to something in your ears and do something entirely different.
that is true, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah.
power of audio, is that you can be eyes free, hands free, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Eyes busy, hands
exactly.
busy, in
So
a
you can
sense.
listen to podcasts while you're,
Yeah.
going to your office, wherever you happen to go,
Mhm.
or you can do it while you're washing the dishes or doing the laundry, or, any number of other things that you need to accomplish in a day. You can
Yeah.
listen to a podcast or an audiobook or the radio while you're doing all these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Well,
just
yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting that in early 20th century, right,
Mhm.
with the radio came in, right, um, and then ham radio, so there was a lot of communication through audio, right,
Yes, yeah.
um, and then TV came in and sort of right, superseded a little bit, right, the
Mhm.
radio in a way, right, disrupted it at least, right. So ham radios were a lot less than before, um, it's interesting that it's coming back now, audio, right. And why do you think? Why do you think that that is happening? Because, like you said, the visual and the touch has been so domineering
Yeah.
as an interface. But now people are going back. I'm not going back, but audio is coming back, so to speak. So, why do you think that's happening?
I think it's overload.
Mhm.
That's a big part of it, but, are you, familiar with Dr. Terry Fisher?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So, he was on my podcast, actually. It hasn't come out yet, but when it comes out, it'll be a lot of
Mhm.
fun to listen to. He talked a lot about voice being our original operating system.
Mm.
So what he said was that, because he talks about AI, like voice AI a lot.
Mhm.
And what he was saying was that we have built our machines so that we can get them to do things, but we have to learn how to use them on
Mhm.
their terms first.
Mhm.
So we had to learn how to type, and we had to learn how to swipe on a screen and all of this stuff, right?
Mhm.
But now we're getting to the point where those machines are starting to catch up to us,
Yeah.
and they're starting to recognize our voices as the commands. And so as it's happening, we're starting to understand that that is our power. Like, that is how we can communicate best,
Mhm. Mhm.
both with ourselves, but also with the computers we've made that are finally up to a technological level now where they can communicate with us on the level we need, as opposed to us needing to
Yeah.
work it out to
Yeah.
work with them.
Yeah. So
So,
basically, just to make sure I understand, you're saying
yeah.
that technology is catching up with what we really naturally are able want to communicate, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So computer
exactly, yeah.
recognition and natural language technology is finally here,
Yeah, yeah.
so that we can do these things, which are far more, most of the time, far more efficient and effective
Yes.
than having to press on multiple buttons and remember things, and right? Yeah.
And way easier, especially for the elderly or people who are
Yeah.
disabled and can't use computers or screens and stuff like that. Like, this is voice is, that's how we naturally want to communicate. And so the machines that we use need to be able to use that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, so let me ask you another question.
Go for it.
Um, so, is there a difference between a voice talent and a voice actor, or is it just semantics?
It's
Because I
pretty
hear
much semantics.
the semantics, right?
Yeah, although, I mean, I guess some people would say that the more heavy acting
Yeah.
voice things would be like animation and video games and audiobooks, that kind of stuff, as opposed to voiceover, which might be more, e-learning and corporate kind of stuff. But I would say it's all acting. It's all acting. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you still
Mm.
have to sound like you care and you're connected to what you're speaking.
Right.
Otherwise,
Right.
it just doesn't impress on anybody.
But
So,
there, I think there is there are certain, like you were saying, there are certain situations where there's actual acting that needs to happen, right? You have a role, and you have to understand
yep.
that persona that you are assuming, and and so it's more than simply the right emphasis. It's like evincing emotion and so forth, right? Um, and I guess like for example, if somebody is building an Alexa skill
Hmm.
where it's a character, right?
Yeah,
So that person has to have like the ability to act, right? They need to be really an actor, right?
sure. Yeah.
Um, and so I'm just thinking about how, if somebody wants to become to get into this world of voice acting, do they need to go to acting school? You know,
It depends. Yeah. I
it's
think
not
acting
a trivial
school is
talent at all.
I mean, acting school is always a good thing. Improv is also
Improv,
a really good thing
improv,
to
yeah.
learn. Musicality, so having actually whether or not you can hold a tune, being singing can help you warm up. It can help
Mhm,
you get your vocal cords working properly.
mhm,
It helps with breath control. And I think just knowing the notes and beats in a script can really help you. But I would say that even if there isn't specifically a role that's
mhm,
given to
mhm,
the actual voiceover, that like I said, all of this is acting. I mean, I'm
mhm.
talking to you in a 5x4 padded room with a microphone in my face and headphones on, looking at a screen, right? This is the most artificial environment you could possibly be
Yeah,
having a conversation in,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Now try reading a script so that it doesn't sound like you're reading.
yeah. No, it's amazing.
That's
What
actually acting.
it is, it is.
It's
You have
it's
to,
putting it in your head
yeah,
and having a dialogue with someone even though there's no one else in the room.
yeah,
So that's really what it is. It's sounding like a real human being when you're not in an environment where you naturally would.
yeah, yeah. No, no, I really, I mean, I'm impressed with. I'll give you an example where we were launching a skill
Mhm.
where it was. Here's the skill. The skill had to do with mealtime for toddlers, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right. And so you'd play music, and so there was a character, and her name was Sophie Sprout, right?
Okay,
And
that's cute.
it is it, right? And so we, so we had the client. It took the longest time to just be happy with a voice. So
Mhm.
like dozens of voices, right? And finally, they settled on a voice, right? So that's great. And then there were scripts, right? Stories, little stories, like 1 minute stories,
Yeah.
and music, and all that. And I remember, like, we had a 3 hour session with the client and the voice actor, right?
Mhm.
And and it was crazy how how like this. So she would do a take, right?
Mhm.
They would say, yeah, but can you do a little bit slower, or like emphasize here and there, right?
Yeah.
And so she's talking to us, and then boom, she gets into character, right? And she does it again, right?
Mhm.
And they're like, you're almost there, and it's like, this is a minute thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, are they abusing or what, right? But it's the client. Uh,
Yeah.
so just that, the ability to get into character like that, right? Listening and talking to the client and all that, talking to us,
And
and
to
then
take direction.
take directions, and then just
Yeah.
take a deep breath, and
Yep.
then boom, and then her bubbly, and she's bubbly. Sophie has to, right, and this is for 3 hours, and she's
Yep.
able to maintain that. So it's a high skill, high talent kind of work,
Mhm.
right? And
Yep.
yet, there's no formal training as such. Let's say you take
Not
a couple of
really.
classes to be a voice actor, right?
There are coaches. There are
There are coaches,
definitely
right?
coaches, and I highly recommend anyone who wants to get into voice acting to see a coach first.
Mhm, mhm,
Because everyone is meant for and feels more comfortable in certain genres within
mhm,
voiceover. So
mhm,
not everyone is going to be able to be in animation or video games or
mhm, mhm,
audiobooks, which I guess
mhm,
is the more, sexy types of
mhm,
voiceovers, right?
mhm, mhm,
But commercial,
mhm,
e-learning, radio, web, streaming media, all of these things, they all can contribute to a very nice career. So you don't have to do one thing or the other. You can do whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
but the market will tell you where you fit best.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be any number of things, but having the experience with a coach guiding you through so that they can tell you what you don't know.
Yeah.
Because we just don't know what we don't know, right? We're just going to perpetuate bad habits if we just continue going along without any instruction.
Yeah.
So getting that help from a coach who can sort of give you the guidance, tell you about the genres, let you know how to move forward, and tell you when you're ready to make a demo. That is the really big thing, because a demo for a voice actor is kind of like our business card. You have to have it. You have to have it. And they're not cheap. Like, they can cost anywhere from $800 to $5,000 to make. Yeah, so they can be very expensive.
What is a demo like for somebody like me?
It's a series of, let's say, 5 or 6 different spots in a particular genre that demonstrates your range and what you can do and what you sound like. So if you were to go to my website, for instance, and look at the top, all of those audio files at the top, they're all demos.
Okay.
So they're made specifically to demonstrate what you can do and what work you would really like to have in the future. So you want to be really the best that you can possibly be, and you want to be competitive. So if what you put out there in a demo doesn't sound like all of the other demos out there, like as in as good as, then you're not going to be able to compete, and the money you spent on that demo will be wasted.
Yeah.
So wait until the coach tells you you're ready to go make that demo, because otherwise you're wasting money.
Yeah.
And this is not a cheap business to be in.
Well, quality requires, right?
That is true. Yes.
Investment. So what do you, if you were to ask you, what do you specialize in within the world of audio voices? What would you say?
I tend to specialize in projects that are 5 minutes of finished audio or less. So I do streaming media, I do TV, I do radio, I do web, I do on hold occasionally. I don't tend to do a lot of e-learning because that's much longer form. And I'm not really an animation video game person at all. And audiobooks are right out. I have no interest.
5 minutes is your sweet spot there.
Yeah, well, usually around 3 minutes is usually around the length of the majority of corporate narrations that you will find out there. And I've tended to find that I really love what they call the anthem videos. So they're the, this is who we are and we're proud, those kinds of videos that you see on people's websites. Anthem videos. Yeah. I love doing them. And I've done them for Dell and BBVA and Bose and, a whole bunch of different companies that it's just fun. I get to be prideful on behalf of someone else. But see, that's for the acting.
Right?
Yeah.
And so usually is what kind of music is playing in the background, like the West Wing kind of music?
Maybe. It depends. A lot of it is dramatic. It can be very dramatic. Starting with the piano music and then moving to the strings, this guy, like the big sounds. I mean, it depends on the company. Again, it depends on the company. And really the companies need to be paying attention to what that music says about their company.
Yeah. And so you would say that, your voice is projects seriousness, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
That's how it feels like, right? It's there's no nonsense here.
Well,
right?
I tend to work in industries like finance, like insurance, like mortgage, that kind of stuff, like healthcare. I do a lot of healthcare. And those kinds of industries do require a certain amount of authority with empathy, if that makes any sense. So, so a little bit of the warmth, but still knowing what I'm talking about.
I understand that totally. And so you get to understand who you are via feedback from the market? Is that, would you say
Yeah.
that how it
Well,
evolved?
yeah, and the market will hire you for things that you're good at, right? They're not gonna hire you for
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that
yeah.
you don't sound good on,
I'm
right?
just thinking about like when you started out,
Mhm.
you have a sense that your voice was a certain kind, or you tried many things and you saw that, hey, this is my nice niche where I can, you know,
I think trying things in the
mhm,
beginning is a really good thing to
yeah,
do because you just never know until you try
mhm,
it,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But ultimately, the market is going to show you where you fit best. And I
That's
don't think
true.
there's anything wrong with that. People
No,
think, yeah, people think, "Oh, I can't do this," and, "Oh, I'm never gonna be hired for this." Well, first of all, you never know that. So,
mhm,
keep trying, you never know. But if the market says that this is where they love you,
yeah,
go where you're loved. Why
yeah.
not? What's wrong with that?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's where you will prosper, you know? Uh,
exactly.
yeah, always time. But that's, yeah, fascinating. And have you, so you mentioned some big brands there. Like, give me more brands of those, like
I've done stuff for Lumber Liquidators, I've done
Lumber.
stuff for Bissell, I've done stuff for Ashley Home Furniture and,
I'm
well,
sure I've
Ashley
heard your
Home
voice. I'm
Store.
sure I've heard your voice.
Yeah, it's probable,
I'm,
yeah. It's Ashley Home Store now, right, I think,
yeah,
and I've done some stuff for some of the large banks, so RBC, CIBC, like, these are Canadian banks,
yeah.
but, well, okay, I say they're Canadian banks because we have, like, 5. The US has 1 on every corner,
Yes, yes,
so
that is true. That
it's
is true. I'm
but
not
I've
trying to
done
tell
stuff
you.
for Frost Bank and for, some credit unions and, everywhere from New York to Hawaii. Like I've all sorts of stuff. And there's technology companies, like all sorts of really interesting
Have you
places that
gotten have you gotten in a situation where somebody wanted to be exclusive for a specific vertical or space?
every once in a while someone does ask me for that. That's there's a There's something called, in perpetuity that some
Mhm,
people ask a voice actor to agree to,
mhm,
and the reason that we won't do that for advertising is because of exactly what you just mentioned there. There are some companies that prefer that you only work in their industry for them.
mhm,
And so if sometime in the past you'd worked for somebody for a really low amount and they'd asked for in perpetuity and you hadn't bothered to worry about it,
mhm.
that spot that you did for a really low amount of money is still out there in the market, and you can't in good conscience
Yeah,
tell this big company that wants exclusivity that you don't have anything else in the market in their industry. So it blocks you from being able to take that big account, right?
yeah,
So most voice actors are really careful about what they license, and that can be a problem because now especially a lot of
mhm.
companies are starting to ask for
Yeah,
in perpetuity
yeah,
without really realizing what they're asking for, I think.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if somebody starts starting to take their audio, their brand, their audio brand, their sonic brand seriously,
Mhm.
I think they'll start doing things like that, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, and if they're paying enough, it's totally worth it. I'm not saying it would be something I wouldn't do, but but they have to realize that that comes at a premium because that means
Yes.
that the voice actor or the music or whatever
Mhm.
sound you're using can't then be used elsewhere,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
means that's
Yeah.
lost revenue.
It is. It is. And you are independent, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, you make your decisions as far as, and you avoid in perpetuity, I'm assuming.
I
As a
do when it comes to advertising. Anything
Okay.
paid.
Yeah.
So, paid online, paid television, paid radio. I steer away from that just because it could
Yeah.
impact my ability to make a living later on.
Yeah. That's smart. That's smart. Yeah.
Mhm.
Makes sense. Okay. I guess let me ask you about the strange facts about sound. I think
There are a lot of them. Yeah,
a couple.
yeah, well, you can influence what you taste by what you hear.
Oh, okay.
So, if you play certain music or sounds,
Mhm.
you can actually influence how you experience something that you're tasting.
Sure.
So I was talking with a fellow named Steve Keller, who is the sonic strategy director for Pandora and SiriusXM and all of their stuff right now. He was one of the early people on my podcast, actually. I think it's only episode 19 and I'm up to like 75 now. But he was a really, really great guest. And one of the things he told me about was something called they did a promotion for something called Propel. Propel is like an electrolyte drink, like Gatorade. And they had, and this was before the pandemic, so way before all of that. So they had put DJ stations together. So people would go, they'd put headphones on, and then they would be able to have a sip of the drink while they were listening in the headphones and deciding on an iPad whether they wanted to dial in more salt or more sweet in the taste that they were experiencing. And as they moved the dial on this iPad, they were experiencing taste differently. And everyone on the team was watching people's eyes widen while they experienced this. So it was, it's really interesting how our senses all work together. And, that's just one pretty interesting demonstration. But if you think about it in our terms, just like regular everyday people, if you go and have a meal in an Italian restaurant and they're playing Italian music, you're going to experience that environment as more what you were there for. As opposed to if you're in an Italian restaurant and they're playing 40s music or they're playing top 40 music and it's like completely different, then you're kind of thinking, oh, well, this place is cheapo.
Yes.
Right? Like, I mean,
you don't have to act together.
Yeah.
Right?
But it ruins the taste. You may love what they make, but you're not going to experience the environment as much. And you're not going to want to necessarily go back, or you're not going to want to sit in there while you're eating.
Yeah. So, how many of these restaurants do you think they're aware of things like this?
I don't think a lot, actually, because I love Japanese food. I do. I'd eat that all day, every day if I could. But if I go into a Japanese restaurant and they're playing top 40 music, I'm not impressed. It just seems like this really weird disconnect to me. And, I understand that ethnic food is a whole thing of its own, I get that. But I just think, embrace it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just thinking about, somebody with the ambition and the energy and the know-how and all that, going to these restaurants and talking to the manager or the owner, at 2:00, when things come back, right? When is there and all that, and then trying to convince them that, hey, let me help you increase your sales, right? Mainly, you would not go back to that Japanese restaurant if you had a choice between two of them and one of them had the right atmosphere and the other one was playing music like that, right?
Yeah,
so
probably.
One, right? And so this sounds like a potential business opportunity for somebody who wants to do it, right?
For a lot of different businesses. Like, I believe they actually did a study where they played French music in a liquor store, and they were selling way more French wine when they were playing the French music. Wow. And they did it with German music as well, and they sold more German wine as well. Although what they said was for the French wine, they were selling like 70% more than usual. For the German, they were selling maybe like 35 or 40% more, because people are just less familiar with German wine in general. So that kind of skewed the results a little bit. But
I mean, these are bottom line and top line. Actually, these are top line affecting. And 70%.
They do.
I mean, it's not.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah.
Where are the salespeople? They should be going out there and selling this.
I don't. Well, yeah. Right now, a lot of things are on hold.
On hold, right? Hopefully, the right of branding and coming back.
Yeah. And I think that when everything starts to come back, one of the things that will really help that is people who understand how sound interacts with everything around us, including what we buy and how we experience anything, in a restaurant, in a shopping experience. All of this plays into working with our psychology. And I think that as far as helping the small businesses to figure this out when we all come back, I think this could be a very big
Yeah,
help.
yeah,
Make a good experience all around
yeah,
in all senses, to having
yeah.
people come back into your stores.
And it seems like
And
low-hanging fruit, you know. It's not like you have
yeah,
to buy some hardware and all that, right?
exactly.
Just,
It's really
the
not that
music,
difficult to do.
just put some thinking into,
Yeah,
the music, and there you go. And yeah, I guess here's my last question. I appreciate all the time that you've
no
given.
problem.
Um, so the question is, what is the difference between being shy and being an introvert?
Oh, that question.
Yes.
Yeah, I am an introvert, and I have been really all my life, but I'm not necessarily shy per se. I think when I was growing up, yes, probably, we all have that moment in our growing up that but when I understand introversion, it's how I replenish my energy.
Mm,
So I replenish my energy by being alone, by having
mm,
peace, by
mm.
having quiet, actually. Just peace. Talking from someone who spends her days in sound constantly. I need silence. That's
Yeah.
kind of that's
Mm,
my replenishing. That's my
mm.
gaining back my energy. So if you were an extrovert, you would regain your energy by being in groups.
I see.
And you would get your energy from other people. I tend to get it internally. So I think that's a difference, that I think people equate that you are an introvert by thinking, oh, she must be shy then. Well,
So let me just dig in there. So shyness. So somebody who is an introvert, it just means that um, they recharge their battery by having some downtime on their own,
yeah.
for themselves. That's how recharge. So that's for you as an introvert. And an extrovert, like my son, for example, he's an extrovert. He needs people around him,
Hmm.
not being alone, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how he recharges his battery. I see. And then shyness has to do with what? What was shyness? Is being what? How would you
Well, socially awkward
awkward?
occasionally, but
Okay,
that doesn't necessarily make you an introvert.
I
I think
see.
anyone can be socially awkward.
True, true, true. I see. I see. I see. Yeah.
But it's
Uh,
it's something you can learn to overcome. I mean, I definitely was shy when I was younger, and I just had to overcome it because I'm in a very public type of career in a
yeah.
way. But I mean, I've learned how to make it work for me because I'm now behind the camera. I'm not in front of the camera. I don't need to be in front of the camera. I mean, with you, I am.
But you seem to be very comfortable. I've seen other podcasts, where there was a visual component
Mhm.
to it, right? Um,
Yeah.
and so you feel comfortable in a social setting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But if I'm in a new setting, for instance, and I know no one else in the room, I'm
Mm.
likely to stand back and just kind of watch and listen.
Yeah, I guess there are, and I'm like you, because I've seen other people who are different from me,
Mhm.
right? Who are on the other end of the spectrum. They just look forward to going to, um, you know, a place where they know no one, and they just love it, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and they love to start talking, and they have no, I don't have those skills or that kind of, right? I need to know a couple of people and then feel my way through, right? And
I'm the
then,
same way,
yeah,
yeah.
right.
I don't have a need to be, talking with 15 people
It's
at
that.
once.
It is exactly that need. It's like they have a need to be there and throw themselves
Yeah,
into the crowd, and
yeah, yeah.
getting attention and all that.
I prefer the one-on-one,
One on one, right?
I love, like, I'll go to a conference, for instance, and as much as I really enjoy the conference atmosphere, and probably know a lot of people if I'm actually going to that conference, I would prefer to sit down and have coffee with 1 or 2 other
I just
people
go
and just
deep,
have a
right?
deep
Deep
conversation.
conversation, yeah.
That's more my speed. That's what I
Yeah.
love to do.
And so, are you looking forward to? Because I am to going back to real reality with the
You know
with
what?
conferences. What do you think?
Yeah, I am, and I'm not.
Yeah, I
I
was expecting something like that from.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do kind of like the virtual world because
Yeah,
it's opened it up to a lot more possibilities, I think, because you don't have to travel, you don't have to stay in a hotel, you don't have to pay for all of that.
yeah,
You can just sit on your computer and talk with people. And I think that's actually kind of amazing. Had this happened when we didn't have such a digital age, like, I don't know what I would have done with myself.
yeah, yeah. I know. I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's crazy. But yeah, at the same time, I miss hugs. I miss hugging my friends.
I know, and I think when like I'm sure like the first conference where I'll go,
Mhm.
right, I will realize how much I missed that,
Yeah,
right? You know what I'm saying, right? Until it
yeah,
happens, sort of. But at the same time, I'm with you. The virtual has like enabled me, for instance, to be very comfortable talking to people like this, right?
yeah, yeah,
Whereas before, I just didn't do it well, what do you call it, often enough to be
yeah.
comfortable, right? When we had conference calls, like some people would turn on their cameras, some people would not. It was optional, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't think it's optional anymore, right? Wait a minute. Well, how come you don't turn on your camera? I would
Yeah,
always,
people ask.
yeah, like, hey, turn it on.
Yeah.
And
I
then
wanna see your face.
I want to see your face. Yeah,
Yeah.
it means something now that, but before it was, and so I'd always turn off my camera just because, and I never liked conference calls and all. But I think now it's just because we've done it so often, right? That
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
second nature, right? Which is
And you're
great,
getting
right?
used to it. Yeah, I'm
We're getting
definitely
used
getting
to it.
used to it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. But I think it's a good thing. I think that it'll open up a lot of these conferences, for instance, to people who wouldn't necessarily get the opportunity to go.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are becoming hybrid conferences, so they'll have a in-person version of them, and then they'll also have an
Yeah.
online version so
Yeah.
that people, in different countries or, who can't afford to pay for a hotel room and a flight, they'll be able to attend too, and I think that's fantastic. I
Yeah.
also love how all of this has opened up the whole working from home thing, which
Yes.
I think is fantastic, and I think
Absolutely.
should have happened years ago.
Years ago.
But, now we're forced to it. So, employers are getting the idea that this is a good thing. And it
Yeah.
saves them money too. It's
It
not
does.
just,
It
I
does.
think people are, yeah, I think that employers were upset that they wouldn't have oversight. But I think that people work much more efficiently if they don't have oversight. If they don't accomplish what they need to accomplish, then you can take them to task for it.
Yeah.
But if they do, who cares when they do it?
That's exactly right. Yeah, it becomes. I mean, it forces us to be results oriented as opposed to busyness oriented, right?
Very much so,
You know,
yes.
okay,
Yeah,
whatever. Just deliver it on this.
yeah,
It takes you half an hour, 3 hours. Who cares, right? As long as it's the right quality, which
yeah.
is the right attitude, right? As opposed to being supervising folks, micromanaging folks.
Well, I
Um,
mean, if you're working something where you're paid on an hourly wage for a specific
yeah,
place that you need to be,
yeah,
then that's a
yeah.
different thing.
That's
But
true.
if you're being paid based on skills that you have,
That's right.
that you're offering to your employer,
Yeah, yeah,
it doesn't matter how long those skills
yeah,
take you to
yeah.
accomplish the task. In
Yeah.
fact, as you get better at it, they take less time.
That's right. Exactly.
How should you
Yeah,
get penalized for that?
yeah. Wonderful. Well, Jodi Kringle, voice actor, solopreneur, podcaster, media geek. Thank you so much for giving us some of your very valuable time.
Thank
Um,
you. This was fun.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye bye.